Welcome to our discussion on principles of economics, and we were discussing about some important applications of the principles of economics to solve several problems. So we have discussed the last problem we discussed about uh, problem number 7, where we said that Jack always spends 300 rupees for petrol irrespective of petrol price. His demand for petrol is inelastic, elastic, unitary elastic, perfectly inelastic, or perfectly elastic. And then we said that the correct answer would be unitary elastic, because you can keep your expenditure same for a price change if you either decrease or increase your petrol for a decrease and increase respectively in price proportionately. And the example what I was saying, that if let us say when price goes up, you have to proportionately reduce your petrol consumption so that your expenditure will remain same as 300. If price goes down, then you have to proportionately increase your petrol consumption so that it total expenditure remains same, right. Then the next problem what we are going to discuss is, if the tax rate doubles, what happens to deadweight loss? Now, if you recall the relationship between tax rate and deadweight loss, let us say here you are measuring tax rate and here you are measuring deadweight loss, then the relationship was like this. So, that means deadweight loss increases with tax rate with an increasing rate, right. So, that means if the tax rate becomes 2 times higher than the previous one, then the deadweight loss will increase by 4 times, right, because of this relationship. And we have proved that also, the relationship between tax rate and deadweight loss in our previous classes when we talked about application of taxes. Please go back to those lectures to find out the exact relationship between tax rate and deadweight loss. So, you will find that the relationship is basically increasing with an increasing rate. Then question number 9. Rahul always buys 3 liters of petrol irrespective of the petrol price. This is just another way of thinking that the problem which we have studied earlier in question number 7. So, Rahul buys 3 liters of petrol irrespective of petrol price. So, his demand for petrol would be what? So, that means whether price is increasing or decreasing, my petrol consumption remains same, 3 liters always. So, this is little easier for you. Options are again unitary elastic, perfectly inelastic, inelastic and elastic. So, whatever happens to the price, my petrol consumption always remains 3 liters. There is absolutely no change. So, that means if I ask you to plot this, let us say this is quantity and this is price. So, what should be the shape? The shape is this. So, at different prices, let us say this is P1, this is P2 and this is P3, but the quantity demand remains same at, let us say, Q star. Okay. So, whatever happens to the price, my petrol consumption remains same as Q star, there is absolutely no change. So, that means what I can say, that my responsiveness of petrol consumption is completely inelastic, okay, completely inelastic, and then the option would be perfectly inelastic, option C. Here I forgot to mark, right. So, this is perfectly inelastic kind of demand for Mr. Rahul, who always buys 3 liters of petrol irrespective of the price. So, that is another application of elasticity that you can think of, right. Then the question number 10, the question is, which principle or principles among the 10 that we have learned earlier should give or should guide you while deciding whether to work or to do MBA after your BTech. Okay. So, let us say you are doing a BTech degree, and once you complete the BTech degree, you have two options. Either you get placement and start working, or you go for an MBA degree or higher education. So, then how do you decide whether to go for MBA or to continue with your job that you got? So, some principles should guide you actually to take a better decision. So, which among the 10 principles? Firstly, people face trade-offs, people respond to incentives, opportunity cost of something is what you sacrifice to get it, both A and C, none of the above. Now, first option, people face trade-offs. Is it applicable? Yes. This is a situation where you are facing a trade-off between either to work or to go for MBA. You cannot do both simultaneously. That is why you have to select one out of these two options available. Obviously, if that is the case, then the principle that you should guide you is people face trade-offs. Okay, that is correct. And then people respond to incentives. That particular principle is not applicable here because there is no incentives that we are talking about. Then principle number, then option C says opportunity cost of something is what you sacrifice to get it. Yes, that is also applicable because when you go for an additional degree of MBA, then what you are sacrificing? You are sacrificing the job what is there in your hand. So, that means by working you would have earned some amount of money, and that you are sacrificing to get the other option. So, opportunity cost of doing an MBA is the sacrifice that I make in terms of the foregone salary which I would have earned. So, that means both option A and C are correct. People face trade-off and there is some kind of opportunity cost also that I must incur if I go for one additional year of MBA, right. Then we will come back to other problems which are little involved. The question is, suppose the demand curve for a product is given by the equation Q equals to 10 minus 2P plus PS, where P is the price of the product and PS is the price of the related product or substitute goods. So, if P and PS they are rupees 10 and 20 respectively, what is the own price and cross price elasticity of demand? Okay, own price and cross price elasticity. So, as you know, to get own price and cross price elasticity of demand, what is own price elasticity of demand? That we understood that inverse of the slope. So, that means dq dp into p by q. So, from the given equation, then I need to find out what is P, what is Q, and what is dQ dP. So, from the equation dQ dP, if you differentiate the demand function, that is given 10 minus 2P plus P. So, dQ dP is basically minus 2, and then what is P by Q? So, that means you have to substitute P and Q here to get what is P. P is given as 10, and if you put 10, then if you put 10 for P and PS is 20, then your Q would be Q minus, let me calculate Q over here, Q minus 2 into 10, Q equals to 2 into 10 minus 2 into P, that means 10 minus 20, 10 minus 20 plus what is PS? PS is also 20. So, minus 20 plus 20 get cancelled. So, this is 10. So, 10 by 10, which is minus 2. So, own price elasticity is minus 2, right. And then the cross price elasticity of demand is, what is the cross price elasticity of demand? That is basically dq dps. Okay. So, we need to differentiate the equation with respect to PS, but my price quantity ratio remains same. Price quantity ratio is not changing, but the dq dp is changing. Earlier I was differentiating the equation with respect to P, but now I need to differentiate with respect to QS. So, this I will remove now. So, now dq dps into P by Q. So, dq, so dq by dps is actually 1. If you see dq by dk is actually is 1, and then so then what we need to find out, dq dps is 1, and then P by Q ratio, that means now what is the formula? The formula is here, I will write again. So, this is dq by Q for cross price elasticity divided by dps by ps. So, that means we can say that dq, which will equals to dq dps into ps by q, that is the formula, that is how we are getting. So, dq dps is 1, and then ps is actually 20, okay, ps is 20, and then q equals to 10, that we have found out. So, that means that equals to 2. Is this clear? So, own price elasticity of demand is minus 2 and cross price elasticity of demand is 2. Now, one related question from this cross price elasticity of demand is plus 2. So, that means if I ask you what is the nature of the relationship between the two goods here, even though it is mentioned, see, it is cross price elasticity of demand is +2. What does it mean? That means when the price of the related good is increasing, let us say x and y, when price of y is increasing, demand for x is increasing. That means, let us say two commodities, mutton and chicken. When price of mutton is increasing, then consumers are switching their demand from mutton to chicken. So, chicken demand is also increasing. That is why the cross price elasticity of demand is positive. Even though it is mentioned in the question that the two goods are substitute, from the sign of the cross price elasticity of demand is also positive, which confirms that the two goods are substitute. Had this sign been negative, then we would have understood, since the two goods are complementary in nature, that is why the sign of the cross price elasticity of demand is actually negative. So, we learned that while own price elasticity of demand is always negative, okay, because that is basically slope of the demand curve multiplied by P by Q, since slope of the demand is always downward sloping and negatively sloped. So, there is no doubt that own price elasticity of demand is always negative, but cross price elasticity of demand can be either positive or negative depending on the nature of the relationship between the two goods. So, once again we have to recall the concept of elasticity and its relationship with complementary good and substitute goods. This is the relationship. Here we see that cross price elasticity of demand is positive. Okay. So, now I will remove this to discuss the next question. Okay. The next question is, which of the following factor or factors will cause the demand curve for labor to shift to the right? Okay. First of all, so that means let us say this is the labor demand curve I am talking about. So, that means in the y axis there should be price, and what is price of labor? Price of labor is basically wage rate, and this is demand for labor indicated by L, and let us say this is my demand, right. Okay. So, the question is, which particular factor or factors among these four what are mentioned here will cause a shift in demand to the right, that means from L1 to L1, a rightward shift in the demand curve. This is, let us say, L0 to L1. That is the question. So, please remember here we are talking about shift in entire demand schedule, right. So, that we have to carefully keep in mind. That means demand for labor is increasing not along the demand curve, rather there is a shift in the entire demand schedule itself. The first option is the demand for the product produced by labor declines. So, the good, firstly we need to remember labor is an input, and any demand for input is called derived demand. What I am saying? Derived demand, that means input per se does not have any direct demand. The demand for input is basically derived from the demand for the final good in which this input is used. That is a new concept I am talking about, which I could not discuss in the context of demand and supply. So, here I am mentioning once again that input demand functions are known as derived demand. Why this is so? Because inputs, they do not have a direct demand, rather demand for inputs is derived from the demand of the final good or services in which this input is used. So, let us say I am talking about demand for agricultural labor, particularly let us say for wheat production. So, when the demand for wheat itself is reduced, the farmers obviously will produce less wheat, and less wheat will require less labor, and therefore labor demand will actually decline instead of increasing. So, obviously we can understand that the labor demand curve cannot shift if the demand for the product itself is coming down. Okay? The derived demand is actually coming down. So, the first option cannot be the answer. The demand for the product in which labor is used, if that itself declines, then the labor demand curve cannot shift. Okay. Next option, the prices of substitute inputs fall, right. Let us assume that the producer is producing the output using two inputs, labor and capital, and now the rental or price of capital is actually declining. So, when capital becomes cheaper, what the rational producer do? The rational producer will substitute more capital for labor. The demand, the production will become more capital intensive because that is now the cheaper input. My output remains same. If you recall the concept of isoquant, what we have talked about, you have capital here and you have labor here, and this is the isoquant, and we said that along the isoquant the output is same. So, the producer has different options, different input combination that can be used. Let us say this is K0 L0, sorry, this is K0 L0, this is K1 L1. So, whether I will use this combination or this combination. So, at combination, let us say this is B and this is A. You can see from the diagram that at point A, the capital labor combination is denoted by K0 L0. At point B, capital labor combination is given by K1 L1. At point A, the producer is using more capital, less of labor, and at point B, the producer is using more labor, less of capital. So, if we assume B is the starting point and then there is a fall in the relative price of capital, that means fall in the rental rent, obviously there would be a movement upward from B to A, and the producer will make the production more capital intensive. So, demand for labor cannot increase. Opposite thing may happen if the movement is from A to B. If the price of the substitute input increases, obviously the production will become more labor intensive, and a movement from A to B would indicate the producer will use more labor and less of capital. So, demand for labor cannot increase. So, that means option B is also not the answer. The productivity of labor increases. Okay, productivity of labor increases. So, when the productivity of labor increases, then what will happen? That will make the business more profitable. From the given input, the producer will make more profit, and if there is more profit, then obviously there would be more demand for more production of the output and more demand for the labor. Okay, labor productivity has increased, right? So, the labor productivity increases means now labor, every unit of labor becomes more profitable. So, obviously what the producer will do? The producer will demand more labor because the profit has increased and the business has become more profitable compared to earlier, right? So, this is the case. What about the last answer? The wage rate declines. Now, some of you might be tempted to answer the correct, to quote the correct answer is D. When wage rate declines, obviously demand for labor will increase. But please keep in mind, this is a change in price of the good. When price changes, the demand for the good will increase, but that increase will always be along the demand curve. So, that is not the shift in demand, because if you recall in the context of demand and supply, we said there is a parametric shift vis-a-vis shift due to change in variable. While W and L, these two are variables here, you see all other factors are actually parameters which we assume to be considered constant. So, that means only this productivity changes which was considered, productivity increases means some technological changes might have happened, demand for the product is due to the technology also, maybe the skill has component of the labor has increased, that is why productivity of labor increases, and that can make the demand for labor shift to the right. But wage rate if it falls, then also there will be an increased demand for labor, but that increase is always along the demand curve, that cannot shift the entire demand schedule. So, the correct answer is the C, not the D also. So, you need to carefully understand and write the explanations. Now, we go to the next question. What is the question? Suppose, question number 3. Suppose that in a year, an American worker can produce 100 shirts or 20 computers. Okay? 100 shirts or 20 computers. While a Chinese worker can produce 100 shirts or 10 computers. If these countries were open to trade, which country would export shirt and why? Explain at what price of computers in terms of shirt, okay, at what price of computer in terms of shirt the two countries might trade. So, first question, if these two countries were open to trade, which country would export shirt and why? So, America is producing 100 shirts or 20 computers. Now, we have to go back and recall the theories what we have learned in the context of exchange and gains from trade. We learned two advantages, concept of two advantage, absolute advantage and comparative advantage. How we defined absolute advantage? Absolute advantage means a country will have absolute advantage in producing a particular commodity, let us say computer or shirt, if that particular commodity is produced using less amount of the input, let us say labor. Okay. But we learned that even though a particular country may have absolute advantage in both the commodities, still it is possible to have trade with the other countries because of the other basis of trade, which is called comparative advantage. And comparative advantage is actually defined in terms of opportunity cost. So, here you see an American worker can produce 100 certs or 20 computers. So, now what is the opportunity cost of uh, computer in terms of cert? Or what is the opportunity cost of cert? That means, let us say this is, let us say in this axis I am measuring cert, or in this axis I am measuring cert, and here it is computer. So, first the American worker 100 certs and 20 computers. Let us say this is 100 and this is 20. Just assume for the time being. So, that means if America deploys all the labor force in computer production, cert production, they can produce 100 certs. If all the laborers are deployed in cert computer this is computer, this is C, and let us say this is cert. 20 computer vis-a-vis 100 cert, right. So, if 100 certs are sacrificed, then America will get 20 computers, right. Or alternatively, let us say that if 20 computers are sacrificed, so to produce 20 computers, to produce 100 certs, America is sacrificing 20 computers. That is why this is the PPF of America. Then what about the PPF of the China? So, this is 100 cert vis-a-vis 10 computer. This is America, or let us say this is America and this is China. So, the question is which country would export cert? So, since the question is specifically asked which country will export cert, based on the theory that we have learned earlier, that country will export cert in which cert is produced with lower opportunity cost. So, opportunity cost of cert in terms of computer should be lower in that country for that country to export cert. That is very simple, because opportunity cost is basically the price, and if price is lower means you are having a comparative advantage. Okay. So, 100 certs if you sacrifice, so then you will get 20 computers. If I sacrifice one cert, then I will get 20 by 100, that means 1/5. So, America's opportunity cost of cert in terms of computer is 1/5, and China's opportunity cost of cert in terms of computer, okay, how many computers they are sacrificing for 100 certs? They are sacrificing only 10 computers. So, this is 1 by 10. So, now comparing 1 by 5 and 1 by 10, that means opportunity cost of SAT in terms of computer is lower in China compared to America. Is this simple? Opportunity cost of SAT in terms of computer is 1/5 in America, while that is 1/10 in China. So, obviously, China will export SAT because of its comparative advantage, because the opportunity cost is lower. 1 by 10 is lower than 1 by 5. Comparative advantage is defined in terms of the lower opportunity cost. And how do you calculate opportunity cost? 100 certs are sacrificed to get 20 computers. So, if I sacrifice one cert, then I will get 20 by 100, that means 1/5 computer. Okay. Similarly, that means 1/5, 1 by 5 is the opportunity cost of cert in terms of computer, which is there in America. Opportunity cost of cert in terms of computer is 1 by 10 in China. Since 1 by 10 is less than 1 by 5, we can say that China has a competitive advantage in cert production. So, now the other question would be then, who would export computer? Then you need to calculate opportunity cost of computer in terms of cert. In America, to get 100 certs, you are sacrificing 20 computers. So, 20 computers if you sacrifice, you will get 100 certs. So, that means one computer, opportunity cost of computer in terms of cert is 5, while opportunity cost of computer in terms of cert is 10 in China. So, then opportunity cost of computer in terms of cert is lower in America compared to China. Therefore, America will export computer. Very simple to understand. So, from this also you can understand that the way I have drawn the two PPF, the slope of the PPF is relatively steeper in the context of China compared to America. So, that means, see, look here, I measured computer in the x-axis. So, that means I can measure opportunity cost of computer in terms of cert. So, slope is actually in America it is 5, while that is 10 in China. So, this is 10, this is basically 5. You understand how to calculate? So, whenever this type of questions are given, which country will export which particular commodity, what we need to do is we need to find out basically the opportunity cost, because opportunity cost only defines the comparative advantage. Here opportunity cost of cert is 1/10 in China, while that is 1/5 in America. Lower opportunity cost indicates China has a comparative advantage in cert production, while America has a comparative advantage in computer production. So, if trade opens up, then China will export cert and America will export computer. That is the case. Now, the question is, explain at what price of computers in terms of cert the two countries might trade. So, what should be the price? Now, the price of computer in terms of cert the price of computer in terms of cert is actually 5 in price of computer in terms of cert, now they are asking. So, that is basically 5 in America and 10 in China. So, what we understood, that the price must lie in between two opportunity costs, so that both the countries will have an incentive to engage in trade. So, any price, that means any price between 5 and 10 should be an appropriate terms of trade for this exchange to happen. So, what should be the price then? Either 5.5 or 6 or 6.5 or 7, 7.5, 8, 9, all these are acceptable price of computers in terms of cert for two countries to engage in trade, in a price in between 5 and 10. That is the answer. Okay. So, the price should not go below the lower limit of the opportunity cost, or it should not go higher than the upper limit of the opportunity cost. So, it should not be 4 or it should not be 11. So, any price in between 5 and 10 should be an acceptable price for trade to happen. Is this clear? So, the price must lie within the two opportunity costs. Here the question is the price of computer in terms of cert, which is 5 in America and 10 in China. Okay. So, America will offer China a price which should be actually which should be acceptable to China. So, China then should get a computer. If China produces computer in its own country, then China has to sacrifice 10 certs. Okay? For one computer, China is sacrificing 10 certs. That is the price. So, if China gets a computer from somewhere by sacrificing 9 certs, let us say, that means that is an attractive price. Or let us say by sacrificing 8 certs, that is also acceptable. Let us say 7 certs, acceptable. But if the price is such that China has to sacrifice 15 certs, then that is not acceptable. Why should I get computer from somewhere by sacrificing 15 certs? That too anyway I can produce in my own country. Let us say America is saying, if you give one computer, if you give me 15 certs, then I will give you one computer. Is this an acceptable price for China? No, because China is calculating, in my own country, if I produce one computer, I am sacrificing only 10. But here America, if I get the computer from America, America is asking me to give 15 certs per computer. So, that is not at all acceptable. So, that means the price should be in between these two. Okay, in between these two. Now say now say the price is 4. It is acceptable for China, but then America will also start importing computer instead of producing in its own country, no? Because America was sacrificing 5 certs for each computer. Now from somewhere America also see that it has to sacrifice only 4 computers. So, no one is producing his computer. So, both America and China will start importing computers if price falls below the lower limit of the opportunity cost. So, that means for a meaningful trade, one party should export and another party should import. But here, when price goes below 4, below the lower limit, both of them are actually interested to import computers. No one is producing. 4 certs for one computer to anyway acceptable for China because it is less than 10. Since it is less than 5 also, America is also now interested to import, then who will produce computer? So, the direction of exchange will become unidirectional. Okay. Similarly, any price greater than 10, if it is greater than 10, that is acceptable for America, but then not acceptable for China. Then China will also start importing cert instead of producing here. Okay. So, instead of exporting cert, which earlier China was doing, now China will also start importing. It would be acceptable for America because America is getting more than what is sacrificing, but it won't be acceptable for China, right? So, therefore, the moment you set a price which goes beyond this limit, the direction of trade become unidirectional. Both of them either will export or both of them will start import. Therefore, no meaningful trade will happen if the terms of trade goes beyond this limit. So, for meaningful exchange to happen, the price of these two goods must lie within the two opportunity costs. Okay. So, with this we are closing our discussion today and we will discuss about other applications tomorrow. Thank you.